This is Houston. Say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem.
Hey there guys, so another vlog and another game, and today I want to talk about Watch Dogs, which everybody was really excited about, and then it was supposed to come out at the launch of the PS4, I think it was, and it got monumentally delayed and so we all had to wait quite a number of months for it after all the launches of the consoles had happened. And everybody was super excited about it. Everybody kind of forgave Ubisoft for it because they were like, well, we'd rather it was right than broken, with it being a new big IP and everything. And was it worth the wait? I think it was, in the main part. It's a fantastic... I mean, the good stuff is it's a fantastic looking game. It looks really good in the main part. There are bits of it that kind of seemed a bit generic, but in the main part they did a fantastic job recreating the city. The graphics of... There was a bit of a hoo-ha with the graphics because in the run-up to the launch of the game and at E3, when they showed it off before the launch of the consoles, there was this uber like, wow, look at the graphics on this, you know. And then it turned out that they'd been showing everybody the game on this sort of uber PC that was like 20 times more powerful than the bloody consoles were. And to some extent there was no reason for them to do that. You know, the game looks great, so why bother making it look like no one's ever going to see it? You know, I'm sure there are some people in the world who have got mega uber PCs and everything looks amazing. But for the main part, if you're going to show off a game, especially at E3, especially when you're trying to do it in conjunction with a PS4 or an Xbox One, then show it as it's meant to be seen by the player, I say. So they got a lot of stick for that. However, it still looks fantastic. And as far as I'm concerned, I hadn't seen the E3 footage for ages anyway, so when I put this game in, it looked absolutely supreme. It looked fantastic. And my initial thoughts on it were, this is great, it's huge, it's going to have loads for me to do. So in the first couple of hours I was kind of really excited. Now the problem was, and I've kind of maybe said this in a couple of other vlogs, I kind of mentioned Watch Dogs. Now this is a good game, don't get me wrong, I'm gonna nitpick at it because it's a massive company that makes this game. Ubisoft are huge, and they should have enough in their locker to know how to fill an open world game and make it interesting for people to spend time in. My problem with Watch Dogs was that I got bored, and I got bored really quickly because they didn't know what to put in it seems to me like they didn't know what to put in this massive world that created, and that to me is why it was delayed. I can't remember what the official reasons were, but you can almost bet your bottom dollar that it was getting close to launch, and a few of them have sat there and said, do you know what, there's not a great deal to do, there's no variety, because you're literally just, like most Ubisoft games, with Far Cry, with Assassin's Creed, you are basically unlocking sections of a map by defeating enemies in areas to allow you to see everything that's in the area of map, and the concept's great and the idea's great, but you have to have more than just that. You can't just have us doing that all the time. At least Far Cry had stuff like crafting and all this sort of malarkey that kind of kept you busy, although I've never actually finished Far Cry 3 to be fair to it, but I got close. But that's another, I guess, another issue I've got with Ubisoft in general, because they haven't really, they've only ever done 2 games that have made me almost fall in love with them, and it was the first 2 Assassin's Creeds, really, with the 2. I loved the first one, although it was a bit repetitive that you were doing the same thing each time. I loved Altair's character, I loved the setting, I loved being in that time, and when I got Assassin's Creed 2, I just fell in love with it straight away. It had loads of it. It wasn't too big and it wasn't too small. It wasn't too small. There was a part of me that kind of did everything really quickly. Or did most of it really quickly, as far as, you know, building up your little town and everything went. And I kind of wished there was more there. But those 2 games I absolutely adored. And more recently, Black Flag, I loved it just for the sailing. You know, the rest of it I could have really have done without, but the sailing was absolutely fantastic, and I think that's obviously the reason they made it. So they have done little things that have, and Unity, I'm really excited about Unity because it looks like it might have the heart that 1 and 2 had. So I'm really excited about Unity. So Watch Dogs kind of, it had all the right ingredients, it just didn't know how to fill itself with interesting stuff. Now I did get a bit of stick from someone who asked me if I'd done these digital missions inside the thing, and I hadn't done, and the reason I'd avoided them was because I'd seen the gameplay footage of them, and it's just not my cup of tea. I don't want to spoil it for people, but there's kind of digital trips you can go on, and basically it takes you out of the real world and you just massive silly games, and I'm sure they're great, they're just not my cup of tea. So that was the one thing I didn't do, but outside of that, the driving was the driving's fantastic. The fact that you can control the bollards in the road for coming up and down, you can control the traffic lights, you can do all sorts of stuff with these gadgety things, but what you can't seem to do is lose a police car. It doesn't matter how well I drive in that game, the police car it might as well be just stuck to the bumper, because you cannot lose it, and they are so close that when you try and shake them off with raising the bollards or other cars by changing the traffic lights, they're too close to you, so you get hit as well. And the only way that I could ever get out of that situation was by driving my car into a river and jumping on a boat, because the police apparently in their world don't have boats. What? So that drove me up the wall, because I knew it wasn't me and I was driving really well, but I just couldn't for the life of me figure out how that mechanic was meant to work, because the only way I could ever shake off, if I got caught in a car, the police, I could never shake them off. There was just, other than driving my car into a river, swimming onto a boat and then going off on the boat, it was the only way I could ever lose them. Maybe I am just really horrendous, but I have played Sleeping Dogs, I was absolutely awesome at losing the police. But the problem is, with this game, you can't shoot the tyres out of a police car or shoot anything inside a car, because they want you to use the gadget. So that element of it was fantastic, but there was no way of slowing the police car down other than using the gadgets, and the mechanic just didn't seem to work. Whether it was me or whether it was, I don't think it was me, because I spent a long time trying to master it, and my driving was pretty sweet, to be fair. So I just felt the mechanics were off. However, all of that said, this is a great looking game. It plays well, it's just not great. And I think as a first outing for an IP, they've done a really sweet job with it. It just could have, either they could have made the city smaller, or they could have made it more interesting inside, more stuff to do that would have kept me engrossed. But I honestly walked around I was just getting bored. The other thing was, I spent hours in Sleeping Dogs trying to get to a point where I could buy all the clothes and have all the kit and get all the stuff for the houses and unlock flats, and in Sleeping Dogs you seem to be able to do it like that. I think within a couple of hours of the game I had every piece of clothing you could have. I just walked around hacking people's bank accounts and got loads and loads of money, walked into the first shop I found and just bought everything. You can't do that in an open world game. I'd have to go to at least 10 shops in Sleeping Dogs to get anywhere near half of that stuff. You can't just get everything in one shop. So there was no sort of thought process behind that. It was like, oh well, you walk into a shop, you can get whatever you like as long as you've got the money, because getting the money was easy. So there was all of that. In the main part, the story was kind of, it didn't captivate me. I ended up rattling through the story. There were some really cool bits in it, there were some really nice scenes, the acting was fine, the cutscene stuff was great, but the story just didn't captivate me and I didn't care enough. The beginning of it was, it's kind of a whimper of a start as well. You want it to be bang, I care. Like when you play, The Last of Us is an extreme opposite to this, but when you play the beginning of The Last of Us, within 10 minutes you're in tears and you care for this guy. You know what I mean? You want to fight for this guy. You want to fight for these two. You care. In this game, somebody dies right at the very beginning, and I couldn't care less. Because I didn't know who they were. I didn't know if they were my family. I didn't know if it was my wife and my kids. I didn't know where. And it's just a real lack of storytelling right at the very beginning. There were other people that tweeted me and texted me and said, "Who are these people? Are these my kids, or are they someone else's kids? Or what? Who what?" Shouldn't have to ask that question. The game should just tell you. So it was all a bit odd as far as that went. They explain it about half an hour further in, but it was just all kind of like, I just don't care. So you were just walking around somewhere that wasn't particularly interesting of things to do. The in a story that you weren't particularly bothered about anyway. And for my liking, if he's supposed to be such an uber hacker, he gets he gets overhacked by just about everybody else in the story and gets caught short. So you didn't quite feel uber half the time either. But the concept's great. I think Watch Dogs 2 will be fantastic. I think I'll have a lot more in it. Now they've got the engine done and they don't have to spend all that time building the engine. I think the next one's going to be fantastic. I mean, don't get me wrong, you know, this is a good 8 out of 10, this game. Possibly a little bit less, in my opinion, because of its content. But it's still a good game, and it's still worth playing, and it's still fun. It's just not great. And I hope that Watch Dogs 2 is. I don't think there was much of a muchness when it came to playing it on Xbox and PS4. I'm pretty sure that neither of them did 1080p. I could be wrong there, but I'm pretty sure that they cut back the 1080p on the PS4 as well. So I think devs are still sort of struggling with the whole 1080p 60 frames per second thing. And as I've said in one of my other vlogs, I don't think it's necessary either. If it's harming the gameplay, I noticed actually. I mean, I swapped my copy of COD for I had it on Xbox One and I got it for PS4 because I thought, well, I'd really like to have it in 1080p, and the PS4 version has screen tearing in all sorts of places. It looks horrible. So they clearly struggled to get 1080p into the, and they've done 1080p anyway, and it was actually converted to 1080p after launch by a patch. So I don't know what it looked like before the patch, but it certainly struggled. And it looked better on the Xbox One, did Call of Duty Ghosts. So it'd be interesting to see how they carry on with this 1080p 60 frames per second thing. And having said that, you know, The Last of Us, which I've just done a vlog on, looks absolutely incredible. But obviously that's an in-house studio in Naughty Dog doing that. So all in all, absolutely worth a playthrough. I think Aiden Pearce will be back in a second one. This topped the charts for ages, but I don't think it was because it was a fantastic game. I think it was because there was very little else to challenge it. So it's going to be very interesting to see what they do with this particular franchise. Really looking forward to what they're doing with Assassin's Creed. That's really exciting me. And Far Cry 4 does look exceptionally good. So I was really impressed actually. Ubisoft were one of these companies that were really cheesing me off because they have huge amounts of firepower in creating games, but every game I played had screen tearing all over it. And I know it doesn't bother some people, but it does my brain in when you know that they can avoid it. Just why is it not happening, you know? But they did it with Assassin's Creed 3, which I didn't actually love as a game, but it was good enough. But it was beautiful, and that was on the you know, the PS3 and the Xbox 360 obviously. But I played it on the PS3, and it wasn't a hint of screen tearing. So it was obviously a new engine, and it looked fantastic. And everything I've seen on this gen has been fine, apart from one little scene in a nightclub where I saw a bit of it. So, but it looks like they've kind of sorted that problem out with the extra power on these machines. So, I'm rambling again, as I do during these vlogs. Yeah, give it a play if you haven't already. I know it's been out for a while. Either console would be absolutely fine. I happen to play it on the PS4 as my console of choice. So, obviously I make my mind up dependent on what I see other people saying about a game. I'll decide whether or not to play it on the Xbox One or the PS4. When it comes to COD, I may well go back to Xbox One now because it certainly looked a lot sweeter on there than it did on the PS4. However, give that a go. Thanks for listening, hope you're enjoying the channel, and I will do another little vlog soon, and you take it easy. Speak to you later.